Welcome to the Wright County Board of Commissioners board meeting for February 2nd. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
We have a number of people following us along on Teams meeting. And I will entertain a motion regarding the minutes from the County Board meeting of January 26th.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I do have one
Ma'am.
correction.
Yep.
Terry Weezy, Buffalo Township, under the solar portion. His name is spelled W-E-E-S-E. So just so the minutes can reflect that correction.
All right. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I'd have an addition to make reference a question that I asked the board at the last meeting regarding the job classification studies, the reclassifications after the $140,000 was spent on the Baker Chili classification study. And the question was asked where we're going in the future with these types of proposals. So I'd ask that that be added, please.
Add it to the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve the minutes with those modifications.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewson. Is there any further discussions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Minute taker, you got those changes? All right. The agenda, is there anything that needs to get added to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve today's agenda as presented.
I will second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewson. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. The consent agenda, is there anything that anybody would like to have removed for further discussions?
Mr. Chair, the lead license bureau specialist position
Okay?
is Lindsay Meyer here.
Nope.
Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Kelly could speak to this issue if there's any questions.
And Mr. Kelly, just the basis is, for everybody, we get a,
I think we'll just get the, if he wants to pull over to a motion and get the consent
Yep.
agenda approved.
oh,
Is
okay.
there anything else that needs to get pulled? Anybody else? All right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of the B, what is that, 5? Sorry, what is it? B2 removed, sorry.
B2, bingo.
Yeah.
All right. Is there, have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Ketchmark. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Commissioner Ketchmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for info for everybody, we get a form to look at for the agenda today. It says board action requested. In this case, it's a position replacement, and then on the bottom, and I didn't come up with this form, but it says background/justification. This one happens to be blank, and just for consistency's sake, if I go to a mechanic to have a vehicle fixed and they give me a $10,000 bill, I ask a question or two. In this case, folks are coming forward with proposals that start at maybe $60,000, and it's the taxpayer's checkbook. So I would ask a question or two, and if the office head or department head is here, fine. If not, Mr. Kelly said that he can weigh in on this. So if you could, please, Mr. Kelly, thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you recall, end of December, you had Becky Anirud come forward with a retirement after 30-plus years with the county. So we had to backfill her position. We did interviews, 2 rounds actually, and offered it to Jesse Goddock, who's worked as the lead Licensed Bureau Specialist with the county for many years. So she was promoted into Becky's former role. So this is to backfill Jesse Goddock's position.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'll make a motion.
Oh, Mr. Chair, just for the clarification, I guess I would ask that, Commissioner, what would you like to see in that? Because for backfill pieces, that's just kind of been standard practice. It's kind of, I guess would say, kind of goes without saying that it's somebody left and retired, it's an open position, we backfill it. I guess in that detailed piece, what would you like to see in there?
Well, and I appreciate the question, Commissioner Vetch, and in normal times, a normal year, maybe there would be less question, but we have new faces at the board, we have a pandemic, and I think that we owe maybe just a little bit, like Mr. Kelly, a little explanation for the constituents, because the business climate in the rest of the county isn't necessarily replacing everybody and all these things that we might be doing here. So that's the reasoning, and other office heads and department heads have been adding, I've noticed, to that box. So somebody else came up with the form, not me, and it seems like a good suggestion. So just a little bit, like Mr. Kelly, and something to work with. That's all.
So, Commissioner Houston?
And, to answer your question, actually, it used to be that every position actually came, to personnel, even though it was already an existing position. And that added to a lot of stuff for personnel. So when we were on the board for maybe a year or so, Mr. Kelly, before they said, well, we don't need all these things to come because it's already an approved position. So that's how it ended up on the consent agenda. But maybe a little more information under that item would be good for people to see that this is to backfill so-and-so's position who left. And sometimes we've had that on here and sometimes not, but.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I think what we
it's a
need
good
to do
idea.
is that if we get forms like this with nothing on them, it just gets rejected. And then they'll have to resubmit.
Sure, okay.
That just makes life simpler for
And
everybody.
I just want to know so we can help
Yep.
facilitate the information that
Yeah.
maybe you and I just inherently know.
Yeah, we know.
We
but
know, and
you're right.
that
Yep.
maybe the company didn't inherently know.
But not only that, it's also for the public too.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
even more.
to have that form and no information doesn't benefit anybody.
Right.
And I can't speak for everyone else's constituents, but mine asked the question. So
Yep.
thank you for your consideration.
All right, did we have a motion to approve that one?
No, not yet.
Yes, yes,
Ketchmark?
yes.
Yes.
Did you?
I make a motion to send, to approve that proposal for the lead license bureau specialist.
And I'll second that.
All right, motion by Commissioner Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Vetch. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. All right, time agenda is 9:02. Look at that smiling face. There we go. That's better.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. The resolution that you have in your packet is for the purpose of basically cleaning up an action that you took on January 5th. On that date, you adopted a resolution revoking or turning back some county state aid highway right-of-way to the city of Otsego. I believe the city was okay with the legal description we used, but Coborn's ran into an issue with their financing. We took a look at it, worked with the city engineer, and the legal description is a little different. So this resolution simply calls for rescinding resolution, I think it's 21-01, and just describing the area to be turned back to the city a little bit differently. So just housekeeping item.
All right, does anybody have any questions regarding this at all?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution revoking a portion of County State Aid Highway 39, similar to what we did previously, but different language.
Brian, we can just do this with one resolution, correct?
Correct.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewsom. Is there any other discussions, any questions? Hearing none, roll call vote. Commissioner Wetter,
Yes.
Commissioner Catchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All righty. Item B, 904, Economic Development Authority, EDA Committee Member Recommendations. My understanding is that the EDA, or Wright County Economic Development Partnership has not given us a name yet.
As of this morning, I don't have a name, but the plan last I discussed with Jolene was someone on their board.
Okay. Let's see, our meeting is next week.
Correct. Next Tuesday at 1 p.m.
All right. I had two people contact, or I had talked to two people. One was recommended by the mayor. Actually, there's two people recommended by the mayor and one from Commissioner Hewsom. One of the people has not returned my call. And I have not had a chance to talk to these people to let them know. So I'm going to make my announcement during the week sometime, if that's all right with everybody.
Mr. Chair, I guess, do we have to, I mean, they won't be formally then appointed because we had to take some action here at this board meeting to formalize it, correct?
That would be the preferred, yes, if possible.
They wouldn't be active members then on that meeting.
Yeah, well, we won't have an
In the
EDA,
bylaws.
we won't have an EDA person either. I mean, from somebody from the partnership,
But, well,
because we don't have a name.
that's true. Do we maybe consider, because we'd like them to be active members as we do the bylaws, do we maybe move back our, we'd have to move it to like the 17th or 18th, our first EDA meeting to the 17th or 18th, so we could take action on the 16th, giving us more time.
Well, how about if we do it this way? We do know somebody from Economic Development Partnership Board will be a member.
Yep.
And the people that I've been talking with are on the Planning Commission from the city of Buffalo, all of them. Why don't we just state that without a name? Could
That
that
could
be
work.
possible? Maybe we need an attorney to tell us that, if it's okay?
I mean, Mr. Chair, our statement, when we adopted the resolution back in November, it was just pretty open. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but my interpretation is just stating the chair of the county board will appoint at-large members to the authority board with the approval of the county board. So I think if you would state it, in my opinion, it would work as you'd addressed it, so.
As long as they're a member, I mean, I guess I'd be okay with it from the standpoint that if they're a member of those two bodies, then that should be sufficient, so.
So we should need a motion for that then.
Well, I would think we'd want a motion to approve that the board agrees to
Correct.
those parameters. Then I guess with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to set the 5 county commissioners and a member of the Buffalo Planning Commission or Council and the Wright County, a board member from the Wright County Economic Development Partnership as a member of the Wright County EDA for the year of 2021.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewsom. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
And, Mr. Chair, a question on that meeting next Tuesday. So we'll be in touch then with the City of Buffalo too. So this will be basically, anyone can sit in on this meeting essentially.
Public meeting.
Yeah, it's an open
Public
meeting.
meeting.
So that would be good to keep.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that we'll also have an agenda put out on the
Yes.
county calendar.
At a
And
meeting,
it's just good to, you know, they'll obviously be, you know, in touch, we'll be in touch with them and make sure that we're essentially working together on all this, so.
Well, absolutely. Which is the reason why that we had suggested somebody from the planning commission and somebody from the for County Economic Development Partnership.
Yep.
Okay. That's it, we voted on that?
Yes, we did.
We did?
Okay. Alrighty. Item C, 9:07. We're a few minutes late, Virgil. You still awake?
Yes, I am.
All right, great. What do you got for us?
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and Board of Commissioners. Today we have 3 items from the highway for your consideration.
Oh,
The first item is a resolution prioritizing our deficient bridges in Wright County. And this is a resolution we update every couple of years, and it helps us apply for grant money and bonding money, which there is some available right now through the state. So I'd recommend approving this resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution prioritizing deficient bridges in Wright County.
Second.
motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Ketchmark. Is there any other discussions? Just one item. There is a bridge that we can have that's down by New Ulm. All we gotta do is haul it away. So I don't know if that's something you wanna look at.
The pedestrian bridge, the one that they'll give it to you for $1, but it's gonna cost you about $250,000 to move it.
Hey, I'm just trying to save the county taxpayer money.
I don't know if with the $250,000 to move it, if you're coming out ahead.
Well, it might be.
At least you proposed it.
All right, resolution. Commissioner Wetter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Next item.
Yes, thank you. The next item is to approve 7 maintenance agreements we have with cities in Wright County. And these agreements, the cities do the maintenance on our county highways that are in these cities, and we reimburse them. And we bring these agreements annually to the board for approval.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 maintenance agreements with the 7 cities.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Wetter. Is there any other discussions?
I suppose we could call out the cities. They're Elk River, Monticello, Montrose, Waverly, Howard Lake, Maple Lake, and Delano.
Yeah, we even work with people that aren't in the Wright County. And that's for a bridge that goes over
Yeah.
the Mississippi. So it makes sense. And again, I appreciate you working with these cities to do what makes sense, common sense. So I appreciate
Yes, it does.
All right, any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Item number 3.
Hey, thank you. The last item today is requesting approval of right-of-way plat number 73, and this is the right-of-way plat for our County Road 118 project. We've already had meetings, our right-of-way agent, with landowners, and we need this plat approved so we can get the offers made and get people signed up.
And this is just a motion, or,
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the right-of-way plat number 73 for the acquisition to accommodate the improvements to 118. in
I'll
Wright County.
second.
motion by Commissioner Fetch, second by Commissioner Wetter. This is not a resolution, just a regular one, right?
Correct.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question.
Yep.
Virgil, is this project moving without too much pushback at this point from the landowners in terms of the acquisition?
No, we've had some good meetings with the landowners, and it's gone well, so we're not anticipating right now any, further need to do any other measures other than having them sign up, and we'll continue.
And you were able to mitigate the cemetery issue at the top of the hill there to figure out how to shift that with that very, very old cemetery?
We are avoiding the cemetery.
Mr. Chair, on a side note, when we were looking at the abandoned cemeteries in Wright County, actually the statute makes mention of the highway being responsible for abandoned cemeteries, so we've kind of, we haven't made them do that. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Virgil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sean Riley, Planning and Zoning Administrator. Discuss plan of study regarding interim ordinance number 20-1, which is the solar moratorium.
Yes, Mr. Chair, County Board, I'm looking for some direction or maybe some input from the County Board on how best to go forward on the study on the solar moratorium. For a reference, last time we did this, we had 20 members. Maybe that was a little bit too large of a group to work with, although last time we met in person. I'm assuming we'll be doing this in a team setting, so that might be conducive to at least inviting people that might not necessarily officially be on the committee, but can observe or have input. We'd want some planning commission members. Last time we had the county board representative from the planning commission on it. I think maybe one additional county board member.
Yeah, we had 2 county
had
board
2.
members on there.
And then we had a few industry representatives, and then a handful of township citizen members that had volunteered or showed interest. The process would be to go through that type of a study or setting, and the planning commission would formally have to hear it as, any changes, would have to hear it as a amendment to the solar ordinance and make a recommendation to the county board. So I don't want to do something that's so far from the planning commission and county board, because ultimately that's who's going to hear it and make a recommendation and decide on it. But I also don't want to get it too far away from the developer and the local issues that we're not getting good input on how to address our concerns.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Betch.
my intent was be to get, at minimum 2 planning and zoning, planning commission members, potentially 3. I would ask that they would appoint their own members to this committee. I know that, I'm asking that we get at minimum, 2 or 3 township representations. I've spoken with Evan from ISP. He has interest from a industry expert to participate in it. Looking at Rob from Minnesota Native Landscapes as a contractor of the experts in solar as an interested party in participating. I've talked with Monticello Township. They have appointed Pete Stuper to this committee as well. And then I know that Commissioner Ketchmark has had a great deal of interest in his district, and I think he has some members he'd like to appoint as well.
I do, I can go into that. The first one was Harlan Anderson, Cokato Township resident, farmer. So he runs cropland, but he also has one solar farm that's been done for a couple of years and one that's in the works. He showed interest. And then to keep it fair and balanced, District 5 is very large, so I went down to the southeast corner, Franklin Township, and they have adopted their own ordinance, so by that, they've taken a special interest in the business. So I thought that was a good place to go, and John Sinskowski has expressed interest in being on that board. As far as accessing the public and input at every meeting, I don't know that we want to turn every meeting into a public hearing potentially, because there seems to be great interest on all sides to resolve this sooner than later. And I mean, you mentioned 20 people at the first board. Hopefully this goes quicker and we don't need as many people, but just take that under consideration. I think that if, public hearing potential at every meeting is going to slow things down possibly. And so we'll take that into account.
And Mr. Chair, they will have an opportunity when the ordinance comes forward for a public hearing on it.
Correct.
So this is mostly just for the research and discussion for a proposed amendment to the ordinance. That's what this group will be doing, this discussion internally. I would ask that, once again, that 2 county board members, as it will come before us as a modification, would be sitting on there. I would entertain, I would personally like to be involved in it because I have a great deal of background information on this, that I want to make sure that the certain items of the scope are at least talked about and researched as we go forward.
Mr. Chair, a couple of comments off those notes. I have a planning commission meeting this Thursday. I will review this with the planning commission and ask for, Mike's on it, that's one. I'll ask for one or two additional people from the planning commission.
I would say two more.
Two more,
From the planning commission.
okay.
Since
I've had a few,
Commissioner Ketchmark is on there, if we had 3 members plus Commissioner Ketchmark, then we'd have a quorum.
Yeah.
So we don't want that to happen.
oh, it's
So 2 more.
two more, correct. And then I've had a few of the industry developers reach out, including Evan. I know you mentioned Rob from Native Landscaping, but I would suggest maybe one more in addition to Evan as far as the developer goes.
You have somebody in mind?
Well, I've had a few people reach out, so.
Okay.
I'd be interested
I can
I'd be
form-
interested in hearing who they are. I guess that if you have information, we can share that after the fact. And I mean, I guess, does it have to be formally appointed, or I guess
So,
it probably does.
And I did not formally follow up with them until I got a feel for this, so let me do that and bring you back the PC names, these developer names that confirm interest,
Okay.
and then what you've structured here, and that'll give me plus or minus a number. I would still suggest it won't be a public hearing. I'm assuming we're doing this by teams, so I'm sure I'm going to have other planning commission members that will want that invite so they can at least watch. That's what they did last time. They actually attended the meetings on top of the other 20. And probably shouldn't close it off from people that just, even though it's not a public hearing,
If anybody wants to, you have to provide them with
that are
the link.
directly tied to the issue. And then I guess we'll need to figure out
I was just gonna say,
calendar.
oops, sorry. So, yes, we did have, someone from Buffalo Township that was here. I don't know if anyone from one of my townships would be interested in serving, but, if we each had a township member.
What are you saying?
And you can pick one.
You're trying to keep me out of this discussion, aren't you?
You get to choose from one of the 18 townships that doesn't get chosen by us. No, so that, and they may or may not be interested, but certainly this is gonna be just a way to amend this solar ordinance, so it's not, I don't anticipate that it would be the same lengthy project that we went through last time to adopt in the first place, but,
Well, it's just tweaking in the ordinance.
right, yep.
Commissioner Wetter?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I know my husband Leander was on the board before, or on the committee before, and he expressed interest in being on that committee again, and that would represent Rockford Township.
Well,
Mr. Chair,
I would suggest that Rockford Township would have to appoint him to do it.
Okay.
Commissioner Vetch?
I guess the only thing about that is I'd say that just for the fact that her husband making a recommendation and then her being a final vote on it, I don't know that would seem maybe is
Conflict of interest?
conflict of interest. Yep.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Mr. Chair, as long as we're recruiting members, as much information as possible when you call these people to say what the expectations are. So let them know. Meeting time, we kind of talked about, it's not going to be a 9 a.m. meeting. We're thinking later afternoon.
Later, yeah, we're thinking in that.
3:30 to 5:30
I think we're gonna shoot somewhere in the 2 to 5 kind of range. Try to blend somewhat between the amount of staff, because a good number of these people are going to be staff or people that are working for the contractors that are working during general business hours. So.
I would like a date and a time set up now, if at all possible, so that when you're contacting these people, you let them know when it's going to happen, and also so that we show that we are in good faith moving forward with this.
I think, Mr. Chair, we come back on we set a date now, we come back on February 16th with a finalized list of members, and we'll approve those finalized list of members on February 16th. I guess I would
I would say probably the last week in February.
That was
would be
kinda my thought,
Would be
is
the
meeting
soonest,
at
but
the-
at least set a date so that people know that it is being discussed.
Mr. Chair, the only thing that if the township has to approve these people, if they have to do it formally, then a lot of them are meeting tonight and tomorrow night, so I don't know if that's gonna be a conflict, or they can just call a special meeting, or just.
I don't
If they
think-
want to informally,
I think they can
Appoint
informally
them?
do it.
Yeah, I'd hate for us, we'd be
this
waiting
is-
till the middle of March if we wait till.
No, this is nothing official, it's just,
yeah.
again, it's
Okay.
a committee to look at it, so I would think an informal.
I would like to go with Wednesday, the 24th is kind of my target, I would say, and try to do like what are you thinking, like a 2:30, 3 o'clock, or start time, because then we'd easily be able to conclude it by, I mean, I can't imagine 2 hours max.
I suggest 2:30 to 4:30, just to make sure I have my staff people and IT and a normal schedule accounted for. It's going to be by teams. These people, they're either going to be willing to do this and able to join by teams, or they're not, so.
Sure, and Mr. Chair, along with ground rules, the per diem and/or mileage, the folks should really know that when you're talking to them. What are we thinking about that part?
I'll have to check if we did that last time.
No, I
know
don't
if that
think we
means
did.
We
This
have,
is,
I don't
Either
think we
one, no mileage, no per diem?
well, there's no reason to have mileage when it's all teams.
Teams, yeah, that wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, we went at mileage. I don't think we did.
I don't think so either, it's a completely volunteer.
No,
It's,
no, it wasn't.
I have no play either way on it, so from that perspective, I guess it's,
Not sure about the formal people, planning commission or a county board member, but again, there wouldn't be mileage, and then it would be by teams, so. I will look at our last round and verify that one way or the other. Pretty sure we did.
We didn't.
No, it wasn't.
I mean,
And it would
It
be up to,
wasn't.
it would be up to the planning commission and commissioner members if they wanted to put in for their per diem. It's up to them. Depending on what day it was and if there's other meetings, it may be a mute point anyway.
yeah, it's exactly, like you said, you probably, for us, we end up meeting on something else anyway, so it doesn't end up, but, you know. I mean, from the perspective, I guess, is he saying, are we formalizing it as a formal committee or not? I mean, I guess it's not really a formalized.
It's an
option.
advisory
It's
committee.
Yep.
Anyway, what date did you say?
February 24th, 2:30 to 4:30?
February 24th at 4:30?
2:30 to 4:30.
2:30 to 4:30?
Is that correct, Mayor?
Sure?
Yep. I'll make a motion to set the first meeting on February 24th from 2:30 to 4:30.
I'll second that.
Is there any more discussions? Okay, just to reiterate, we'll have two board members, Commissioner Vetch, Commissioner Ketchmark, two planning and zoning members, and you said you had two township officials from your district?
One township official from Franklin, the other Cokato Township
Yeah,
resident.
so resident, not a official,
No,
okay? And you had just one?
I just have one, yep, and then there's the industry members that are interested in participating that we should have, so.
Okay. And you only have one township, Commissioner Witter, correct?
Yes,
All right. And Commissioner Houston, did you want to reach out to Buffalo Township?
Yeah, what I'll do actually, Mr. Chair, is I will contact all 5 of my townships and let them know about this, and then I'll make a decision about appointing one or recommending one.
One or
But
two,
then
two at the most.
2, okay.
At the
And
very
then
most.
and then at that, and then tell them that anyone else that's interested, we can send a Teams invite to them. Correct? I mean, if they want to observe.
Of course, I would suggest that's reserved for people directly tied, developers, township.
Yeah,
area, anybody can watch it.
yeah.
Yep.
And I'll be back on the 16th, right?
Pardon?
I'll be back here on February 16th to
Yes.
finalize.
Yep.
Correct.
Perfect.
And again, this will be a Teams meeting, it will be put on the county calendar with the link.
I'll be sending invites.
Okay.
But whatever else we do on the county calendar, we'll do.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And we had a motion and a second. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Dr. Mattice. Again, it's just an honorary. Although we are thinking of naming him Doctor of Ditches.
DR stands for a lot of things, Mr. Chair. I won't go into what I could come up with.
Okay,
So,
we'll let go this time.
good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Got a few items of business for you today. The first item is to approve the publication of bid notice for Collinwood Regional Park paving improvements. Got a lot of papers here today. Collinwood Park paving improvements, we're hoping to have that out for bid here for the next 2 weeks, with the bid opening planned for February 23rd at 1 p.m. Be a virtual bid opening. This is a project that's part of the Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Plan. The current estimate is within the budget limits. Attached to your agenda item is the bid advertisement. This is the paving portion of the expansion of the campground facilities that we struggled with 1 year with weather and got it completed last spring, so it opened in August.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the publication of bids for Collinwood Regional Park paving improvement, and let's hope for good bids.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Batch, second by Commissioner Houston. Is there any discussions? I do have one. You gonna try and tie this in with some of the highway? I was just trying to find my notes here. Highways has some out.
We are tying our Crow River Regional Trail Phase 1 paving in with the highway bids, but not this one due to project locations and
They don't have anything down in that end of the county?
Not close enough, yeah.
Okay,
type of contractor we might be looking for, and this is maybe a little different.
okay.
Mine favored.
All right, any other discussions? Hearing none, just the regular one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 2 is confirming Commissioner District 5 by Commissioner Ketchmark. Parks Commission appointment, Mitch Klein of Cokato, to fill out the term. That'll end on December 31st, 2024 for the Park Commission. Usually this is on a consent agenda, but since I came here today, it got put on a speaking time. Usually it'd be under Mr.
Are you gonna
Ketchmark.
make a motion there?
Sure, just a little background that longtime resident, live next to Collin Park, user of the park, takes an interest in a lot of parks. And this spot was open for over a year, Mark?
Correct.
And so about time we get it filled, so we've got that. I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Klein to the Parks Commission.
I'll second. Oh,
Motion by Commissioner
he's the heating guy.
Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Houston. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. As per county policy, all donations need to be accepted by resolution. Received in the mail a donation from Laura Von Busch the other day. So in front of you is a resolution to be adopted to accept the donation for the maintenance and upkeep of Robert Nye Regional Park. Those funds will be put into the Robert Nye Regional Park account and monitored by us. On your agenda item, there was a little comment she made that I quoted for her on there. So this would be a adopted resolution. It would be a roll call, sir.
All right.
The chair will make a motion to accept the donation, and it was a very nice little letter that she wrote, so, thank you.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Batch. to accept donation by Laura Von Bush for the maintenance and upkeep of Robert Ney Regional Park. We're very grateful of. Any further discussions? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Resolution, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Wetter?
Aye.
Commissioner Ketchmark?
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous.
I thought you were gonna do it on paper, sorry.
No, I was awake this time.
You're okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is to request you adopt a resolution related to a federal recreation trail grant application to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for possible improvements to a trail crossing in partnership with the Wright County Snowmobile Association. It's a little history. Wright County is the financial agent for the Wright County Snowmobile Association.
You have to
So
push
grants
hard.
that they apply
Push
for.
really hard.
Center.
Real hard.
Right in the middle.
Our next ones won't be so hard.
We are the fiscal agent for the Wright County Snowmobile Association for their grant and aid grant through the Department of Natural Resources for their grooming, their signage, equipment, stuff like that. Those finances are passed through the Parks and Rec Department. We fill out the paperwork and then they get the money back. It comes to us, goes back to them. It's an in and out grant. Since we are the fiscal agent, we'd be sponsoring their grant application. They'd be providing the local cash match for this project. We would do some, because we have some equipment and manpower, we'd be doing some of the in-kind labor. The trail crossing would not only benefit the Snowmobile Association, it is within the Wright County Park boundary. So it would also benefit our regular trail users for the seasons outside the snowmobile season. That's why our in-kind labor thought was necessary.
Which park is this going to be trail crossing for?
It would be the snowmobile trail that crosses it through Bertram.
Crosses Bertram?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that goes over Otter Creek or?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution related to the federal recreational trail grant application.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Batch, second by Commissioner Hewsome. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, resolution. Commissioner Wetter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Thank you.
Last one's more of an update for you. Back in September, the Park Commission reviewed a property out by Harry Larson Park. It was a 40-acre property, part of the biological survey in Wright County. Their recommendation was to come to the board and ask us permission to do an appraisal, to have negotiations with the landowner. That appraisal was completed on January, right after Martin Luther King Day, so 18th, 19th, right in there. Received the appraisal back, presented it to the landowner. He said, we're done negotiating. So basically this is to update you that the appraisal was completed. The value of the land, that the appraised value of the land was not acceptable to the landowner, so we will not be pursuing any grants or requesting any permissions to go after grants for any acquisition.
Mr. Chair? Just a
Commissioner.
question, can you reveal what the appraisal came in at?
Yep, it's a public document because it's issued by us. The appraisal came in at $155,000, and that was did not include the building entitlement. The building entitlement would have been administratively transferred in our planning and zoning to his additional lands.
Thank you.
Any other questions? For Dr. Matthijs?
Perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Matt Ketchen, Ag and Drainage Coordinator.
I don't get a fancy doctor in front of my name.
No, you're just dealing with ditches.
It's both.
Yeah, I'm like the kid that gets picked last at the playground, and I'm just happy to be here.
Yep. Yeah, just don't stick your tongue in the metal pole.
Matt, are they still picking you last over at the Parks Department for the?
For the bowling team.
Yeah.
All right, I'm pulling up my shared screen here, so. All right, so my first item I have on the agenda here, it's relating to our adoption of the buffer enforcement. If you remember back in 2018, we took over the enforcement jurisdiction for the buffers under Minnesota statute 103F.48. With that, Soil and Water sends us notices of non-compliance, and then we act as the enforcement entity, send out what's called a corrective action notice to the landowners who are not in compliance. They have to get into compliance, and if not, then we work through that process. There was one interesting one that we received. It's on a county ditch number 20, which we're very familiar with. It's been one that we've discussed quite a few times here at the board. Essentially, that section of the ditch was dug open. It used to be tile. Now they dug it open into an open channel back in the 50s. But legally, it was established as a tiled ditch system. So under the buffer law, if you have an open ditch system, a county ditch, you have to maintain 16.5 feet of perennial vegetation on each side of the ditch. You're not subject to that requirement if it's a tiled system. So that's the rub here. It's, this ditch has been opened up for a long time, should have a buffer on it. It also should probably be replaced with tile under drainage law. So these are kind of complex questions, and hopefully Greg pops on if you guys have any questions.
Mr. Chair, question, if you want to go?
Nope.
So because we can charge back the cost of putting in the buffer strip back to the ditch system, correct? I'm guessing that's far cheaper than $25,000. I mean, I guess, I don't know, we have to pay perpetual losses, correct? On
the buffer, so when you order redetermination of benefits, which we recently did on County Ditch 20, you have to compensate them under drainage law for that area. This area, when we were doing the redetermination of benefits, we were in discussions to do a repair on that section. So going under that assumption, this landowner did not receive that damage payment for the buffer.
I'm wondering if that's cheaper than the cost of putting the tiled system in.
Yeah, and then, but I would, it'd be a good question for Greg, because I think legally it's considered an illegal improvement.
Right.
When you go from tile to an open ditch. So I think if you wanted to leave that, there's a possibility you could, but you would have to go through an improvement process.
And that still might be cheaper to go, I mean, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint that it's probably still cheaper for us to go through the little bit of legal cost of making it an improvement and then just charging back the losses to the system and leaving it open. But I don't know, I guess, what's the cost benefit analysis on it?
But if you look at it, at the pictures, this system's not working, obviously, because if it was a culvert or a tile system, there's an awful lot of water in a large area there that for some reason is not going where it's supposed to go.
Yeah, and that's exactly why it was likely dug open. The tile was blocked or something happened, so they dug it up and open, and obviously that's a cheaper cost than putting tile back in there. It's interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring this one to the board. It's what do we do, long term? Just wanted to have some.
Yeah, I mean, long term, it does appear to me that tile would be better, because you're going to have to maintain this. If you do go with the buffer system, that's going to be a maintenance too, and this would be something that would be in place, and you wouldn't have to do anything more with it for over long, except if you have to do cleanouts or that kind of thing, but I don't know.
Mr. Chair.
I mean, I think by law, we're supposed to put it back to the original, and that's a little bit of the thing too, so I don't know, but Greg's on, I'd like to hear his take.
Yeah, just a moment, Commissioner Batch.
I guess I'm just sensitive to this system because this system already is carrying some substantial costs already to it, and it's kind of getting at the point where there's the cost benefit analysis is tipping way too far one way. So at a certain point, we have to determine how much money can we stick into this system to even the landowners to even be able to actualize that benefit. Like many of the systems in the county, that's the problem we have with it. Yes, it may make sense to make it a tile system, but unfortunately it'll take 100 years for these landowners to get the payback on that benefit, so.
Well, my concern is if the water doesn't go anywhere, it's gonna flood out those fields anyway, so.
And it does. I mean, that's why we originally, I have this slide talks about, you know, I highlighted the area in red. I apologize, been busy with 10 and every other ditch. So that was the area we were looking to replace originally, got bids, and you can see highlighted in blue there is the section in question that we received the notice of noncompliance. So we were looking at replacing that whole section there, and that was $72,000. I mean, it's a 13-foot cut in that area. When you do that, you have to add bedding and stuff like that, so the cost did go up. But, you know, if you're not looking to replace that whole section and just to fix the issue where the buffer is, you know, that's where that $25,000 estimate came.
Okay, so it's 72,000 just to replace that back to, closed ditch again.
Just for that section, it would be 25,000. If you remember, we had issues. They replaced the whole highlighted section in red with what's called single wall tile, which, you know, now when we would replace it, we would use dual wall, which is a lot stronger material, and they put single wall 13 feet below the ground, and Mark Orger is on the phone if you want to ask him what his
And when was
opinion.
that?
What?
And when was that?
In the 80s.
Oh, okay.
So we were having, you know, bowing of the tile, cave-ins, that sort of thing, just because there's so much weight on top of that tile. It wasn't meant to be buried that deep.
Okay, I was just kind of curious, I wanted to make sure it wasn't
Yeah.
during our time that we did that, and it was
Yeah.
actually before you were born, so.
Yeah.
You're completely innocent this time.
I just get to deal with it now, right?
Mr. Chair, Matt, have we considered purchasing maybe as a ditch system 5 acres and putting a holding pond for that? Just because that might be the cheapest route to go, and then we can basically manage the flow, and then we'd still be able to leave the system open. I don't know, I'm just trying to just brainstorm some different options to try and keep the costs down.
Right.
Well, we may have to have an engineer do that, but, Greg? Mr.
Yes,
Carter?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, just talking, I just want to reply to Derek's comment here on the holding pond. I don't think that's going to be a cheaper alternative, even at 5 acres. The price just for land acquisition is going to easily exceed 25,000, I think, on that. And then you have to take into account the digging and what you're going to do with all the spoils, and you have to acquire easements for that as well. So I think if you did a holding pond on that, you'd be looking easily at $150,000. And Mark's on the line here too, but that's just my rough estimate, you know. But
Greg, there's the other issues, further down the system with this one in terms of the ditch and the capacity of it and the flooding that, I mean, this is just one area of it, and that's what I'm wondering, if you're doing it because we're gonna be in $150,000, $250,000, even probably north of that, to really get the system operating properly, and that's where I'm thinking, when you're looking at it from a holistic approach, it might be something that needs to be considered.
yeah, it can be something that can be considered, I think, as part of, yeah. If we wanted to go down the whole system evaluation line of it, but this is such a tough one because it's mostly tile. You know, I talked about this with Matt, and it's just a difficult one. You know, we have an obligation to repair these and to get them working again, but, you know, we can't abandon them on our own. We have to get a petition from a landowner to do it. So if the ditch is still there, we have an obligation to maintain it.
Well, I would sure hope that we're not looking at abandoning it after we did a redetermination of benefits,
No, well, no.
because that would have been the time was before we did that.
Yeah.
Does this help any of the landowners around there? Is it actually doing something?
Yep.
Yeah, if you remember, section, so kind of just upstream where I highlighted this in red, this flooded approximately an extra 19 acres in this area just due to some of the issues with the line downstream. So that's and that's when we received the repair request from the landowner and the person who manages the land for Maven cams.
Now, is that flowing from right to left?
Yep, flows this way under 7. If this is Summers Lake here, just for orientation. flows down, actually eventually goes into Robert and I Park and outlets there, so
Oh,
it's,
so it goes from left to right, not right to left,
Yep.
okay.
Mr. Chair, if I'm trying to remember correctly, that the benefits are on hold on this one, or the costs that we've incurred at this point are on hold pending a redetermination of benefits, correct?
no, we
We
did the
assessed back, because it was right around close to 100,000 that we assessed back out, or at this point,
70,
okay.
70-some thousand,
70, yeah,
76 for
it
the
was-
engineering and that kind of thing?
Yep, and then we had damages payments, excluding this section, obviously, and then, some work, it was about $10,000 worth of work.
This system was one that we talked about a redetermination of benefits on, I'm trying to remember where this one fell on the,
Yeah, it's been done.
it's been done, okay, that's right, yeah. So all the numbers of them,
I know,
I
I
wish
know.
we made names on them, because I can't
Yeah,
remember which
I
ones.
know, we should just name them.
Commissioner Hudson?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I mean, I'm getting phone calls, Matt's getting phone calls, we're getting emails. I mean, the farmer is concerned because, as you said, when you have 19 acres of farmland that's underwater, that is a huge, I mean, they're losing a huge amount of money. So that's, it's difficult because obviously when you do a redetermination of benefits, it's difficult for people to understand why they're suddenly on this ditch system that they didn't know, because when they first did the benefits, they just, okay, you live in the ditch, so you're responsible for this. Well, then they take in the whole watershed, and so this has been a process for sure. And I think, Matt is looking to have a public meeting, or at least via Teams at some point, but also putting some kind of a PowerPoint together that we can have the landowners access this so they can take a look at just exactly what is going on with it. And there's some pictures that show, for example, this particular piece of property, but along the route what needs to be done. And I mean, I think it was about 2 years ago that before we did the redetermination of benefits, and I mean, Commissioner Vetch and I were kind of involved because it goes through both of our townships. And we just looked at the cost, and it's kind of like, does this make sense? Well, it gets to the point where, we have to do it statutorily, but also to help the landowners that their water is being backed up, so.
And see, my concern is buying the buffer doesn't solve the problem for the long term.
Well,
I agree.
I don't know, because you get more capacity and more flow out of an open ditch than you do from a tile ditch.
But the problem is, it's going from an open ditch back into a tile ditch. So it's going from a tile to an open to a tile, and as Matt said, the tile has collapsed downstream from that open area. So unless that gets fixed, all you're gonna do is back up water into that area.
But it's kind of more the methodology is, does it make more sense to make all these improvements along the line and making them all improvements to making the whole system open versus closed? Just because, I mean, either that or you're still gonna have to do an improvement along the whole way, because I don't know necessarily, what do you have in there, 12-inch? And 12-inch probably isn't sufficient for the waters there now. If I was gonna make the improvement, I wouldn't put a 12-inch, I'd go through the improvement process and probably put 18 or 24-inch. Just because if you're going through it, we obviously know we need to get more.
Well, if you had a full pipe that was working correctly, it may do it. But the issue is, do you keep Band-Aiding it, or do you fix it?
Well, that's exactly, I agree with fixing it, but I'm just thinking with the cost size, I don't know.
No, and I understand that. And I can't recall, we can, on the larger ones, repairs, we can send it out 10 years, was it, or
Actually,
15 years?
20 based off the amount of their assessment, so.
20 years, was it?
Yep, at 2.5% interest rate, which is, I mean, we went through that, and the next closest county was 4%, some went to 7%, which was the max, so
Yeah.
I think we're
think
definitely
that's
most
fair.
reasonable in that
Mr.
aspect.
Chair, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Wetter?
about the only thing that would be of value if it was an open ditch would be that the sediment would settle. But then, if you're gonna have a pipe on the other end where the flow goes through, you're gonna have to keep that, put something there so that sediment doesn't fill that pipe and plug it. So you've got, you know, two things that you have to weigh out. So if you sit there and put a buffer on either, you got those things that you gotta contend with too.
I guess I'd almost say at this point, because we haven't used Houston to do a total, I hate engineering costs, but unfortunately, I need to know,
No.
like, because we know that there's other issues within the system. I think in piecemealing it maybe is gonna end up costing us way more money.
Well, in the long run, we're just kicking the can down the road.
That's right.
I mean, I just don't,
I don't
paying
understand.
25 here, 50 here, 25 here, when at the end of the day, if we would've done the whole thing, it ends up, you know, I don't know.
I mean, I got all my ditches taken care of in my townships and stuff, so I don't understand where the issue is here.
Well, and Mr. Chair, Matt, that's what we're looking essentially at doing, correct? We're looking at doing, you know, at least part of the ditch, it's almost 6 miles long. So it's certainly not just, you know, it's not gonna be cheap, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
No,
No matter
But-
what you do.
You know, it's not bad everywhere either, correct?
I mean, yeah, there's some ones, I think when we went through the presentation, there's the large tile that's creating sinkholes, and there's some areas, open ditch that need to be cleaned out. So, I mean, you know, you could say 60% of the system, you know, you should be looking at doing repairs. I mean, we did a lot in the park just to clean it up ourselves. Luckily, that relationship's been working out really nice for
Yeah.
those situations. But, you know, at some point, it's a cost, and obviously we're cognizant of it. You know, we get the calls, and you know, I have to deal with people, you know, people on fixed incomes that are getting a ditch assessment. You know, if I could hire a contractor to do it for free, I would. You know,
Right.
but
Right.
unfortunately, in order to fix it, there is a cost, and unfortunately, this one is a tiled system, which is more expensive than an open ditch.
And it's very difficult when things haven't been maintained, and then we come in,
Yep.
you know, 50 years later and need to repair, and it becomes a huge issue instead of being maintained along the way, or, you know, if you put in the wrong kind of tile, then that just,
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson there is, you know, you have, this repair was done, you know, and I'd say somewhat recently in our books, but in the 80s.
Right,
And it was
yeah.
done improperly, and now that cost is, you know, if it would have been done properly with the right materials, I mean, the estimated life of a tile is 100 years, so if you put it in there, it should last for a long time.
but that was more expensive doing it right.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
I'm sure that was right.
And Matt, you feel confident if we did this at 25,000 with the 12-inch? I mean, I just don't want us to do this and now we realize in 2 years, 3 years that we should have done an improvement and put a larger tile in it. That's the reason we have a lot more options if it's open in terms of if we you know, you put a tile in that you're stuck with that tile, that, you know.
Yep, and, yeah, and I guess you know, I'm standing up here, obviously, in, you know, working with ditches, but as a representative for the buffers, you know, for the county, and that's kind of the question, you know, I'm getting pushed from Bowser to get this issue resolved, and it's, you know, are you gonna repair it and do that, or are you gonna look to, because right now, you know, I could see the landowner's frustration, you know, he's not legally required to have a buffer there, because it's supposed to be a tiled system, and the only reason this is coming to us is because we haven't fixed it, so does he have to put in a buffer?
No.
Because of our, you know, that's the issue, and if we're gonna do something, then we should look at, you know, we should
Doing it right.
compensate that landowner for the buffer and pay to seed it.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Wetter?
If you do put pipes in, there's awful lot of water there. Will there be blowouts downstream, or would it, you know, be pretty? Because that's going to be a lot of water going through that flow. I'm worried about downstream, how it'll affect people downstream.
Well, it's not flowing now, so it won't make any difference.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
is it plugged down the
if-
way
if-
too,
if
or
you-
don't
If you
you
look
know
at that pond, you know, that used to be piping, obviously it's not flowing. Because there's a lot of water sitting in that ditch.
That's what I'm saying, if you put a pipeline, you know,
You're
in
gonna
there-
back it up backwards because
Yeah.
it's not flowing.
And we-
Otherwise, you wouldn't have that huge pond there.
Okay.
and we had a fairly dry year last year, so.
Yeah,
He still, you know, he didn't really get to plant anything, and, you know, that was the the frustration with it and stuff. So, I mean, there are options, you know, I have already notified Soil and Water about it, we've talked about it. It would be a decent site for a wetland restoration or something, but I have, you know, the landowner has to be involved and have buy-in and want to do that project too. And then obviously that has a cost, you know, we're talking,
Definitely.
I'd say $7,000 for, you know, prime ag land in this area, just to guess off the top of my head. You know, if you're looking to, you know, purchase the 22 acres or so, which I think you would need in order to do that, you know, plus all the work you'd do, I mean, we'd have to figure out a way to fund that, to do a restoration. But I do think that's a good option. It provides storage for the system. Maybe long-term, that's a good way to do it. You know, we do have Mike Handler from Soil and Water on retainer for projects like this. You know, we could have him look into it.
Mr. Chair, I think that might be a good discussion point. Can we hold off? And basically, I mean, at this point, I'd say, I'm not going to enforce the buffer piece at this point because we are still determining the outcome of that land. Because, I mean, I think if we can find a way to get a wetland restoration project in there and be able to get some more capacity, I know Mark or Commissioner Dahlheim, that's a little bit more of a Band-Aid. But I think at least in the short term, until we can figure out the cost benefit for these people in the system, because they've already shouldered a enormous amount of money already in repairs, and I'm trying to keep that number down and try to, because we have to really spread this out over time.
Well, we can spread it out over 20 years. I don't have the answer either. I think probably the best thing to do is to get the gentleman we have on retainer, to have him look at it and see if it's something that he's willing or think he's capable of doing, because I don't know this gentleman, but to see if he's interested in doing that and what his thoughts are, and then move forward from there. But, you know, I would say, like Bowser, you know, we're working on it, we're trying to figure out what's best for the whole ditch, and if Bowser wants to pay for everything, we'll be happy to do whatever they want us to do. I don't know what else to say. Commissioner Ketchmark?
Yes, thank you. And I might have missed it, but what I'm wondering is, when you started out, and I heard a couple times that in the 50s this was established as a tiled ditch,
No, it
Originally,
was repaired.
but it was established originally.
Oh, in 1950?
No, it would have been, I just have 1950s aerials is about.
But as a tile ditch.
Yeah, originally
So-
established,
so
so.
I'm
Yeah, that was in
wondering-
1906 or 1918 or something like that.
So I'm wondering by what authority it turned into open ditch. Was it an authority, or was there a rogue person with a track hoe on a Saturday night going in there and ripping the tile out?
Yeah,
That's what I'm wondering, because maybe that comes into play on how this gets resolved and who authorized it.
Yeah.
I may have missed that, but.
It's very likely that the landowner, the ditch tile plugged up, got blocked, had a cave in, so they dug that section open rather than repairing it all with tile at that time, and then it just hasn't been fixed for 70 years.
Okay, so maybe some onus goes to where that originated.
Sure, the person's gone, long dead and
I
gone.
know.
Well, or the current landowner or whatever, would have to check the
Statute
legal
of
language.
limitations would trick in on that.
But the other issue is that in 1980s, they put in the wrong type of tile. So is that the county board's issue?
Well, I was talking about the open ditch part.
I know,
still,
but the only reason is that it got open is because there's an issue downstream. So, is it the chicken or the egg?
There's a few moving parts here, and some not moving, apparently.
On a ditch, I just find that so hard to believe that they can be so
They
complicated.
never have issues.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Wetter.
I would suggest that you probably should refer it back to Mike Candler and the Soil and Water. See what he might suggest and put this on hold until maybe he could give us some advice on what to do.
Yeah, I did have one other thing that I thought of for this is, could we rent the 16 and a half feet around the buffer this year and seed it ourselves, pending what our long-term, it definitely needs a buffer. I mean, you obviously know how important buffers are to ditch systems.
Well-
Short-term, and then, and then figure it out long-term.
But why? The water's not going anywhere. It's
Yeah.
just gonna flood. So I would think if we're working on trying to come up with a solution, I would assume Bowser's gonna be willing to work with us on it. It's not, I mean,
I think it's a good
I-
case,
I-
it
though.
doesn't make any sense
I
to,
would say go ahead.
to
you
do
know.
it
What's the
temporary.
rough cost on
Contact
it,
them
doing it
and tell them
internally?
we're working on it.
But what?
If you seeded it yourself with your stuff, I mean,
Cost to seed, it's, maybe $200 an acre, so it wouldn't even maybe under that, so.
Put some oats or something on it.
Yeah,
Rye.
just something.
I don't know, it depends how long we're gonna sit like this, because if you end up sitting like this for 2 years, then yes, Matt's route is the better route. In at least putting something down. If it's gonna be, if you think we're gonna be able to do something this summer, then maybe
Well,
not.
Yeah,
I would say then, it's a possibility. And I don't know if you even have to rent it. You put down, oats along with some alfalfa. The farmer will be able to get that, and it won't cost him anything. We're not gonna be planting here in the next couple of weeks, I don't think.
No, you got time.
So I would think, let's talk with the engineer, see his suggestions, and then bring it back to the board, and we can decide at that point, do we talk to the farmer and say, if we plant this, it's all yours, take the oats or whatever he wants us to plant, and then the alfalfa the following years.
And if you work through the SWCD on some project, there could be cost share monies there, so.
Grant funds.
Commissioner Houston?
So, Matt, how is this gonna resolve the issue with the farmer that,
It's not.
and that's the problem, because if they can't get in and farm these 18 acres, that's a huge problem. So if we have to start compensating, or whoever compensating for these 18, 19 acres of crops that are being lost, again, because, I don't know what to tell this gentleman anymore. It's gotta be fixed, and, he's wondering why we aren't in there. He's been asking us for months, why are we not in there getting this taken care of? So, I hate to keep.
Because it's not a simple solution. That's
Well,
the reason.
it's not a simple solution, but I know they are aware of the fact that there's gonna be a PowerPoint available, because I, told them that, so they can take a look at the system and what all needs to be repaired, and, what the, estimated cost of these repairs are gonna be. So people have that, can look at that, but also nice to know that they can spread these payments out over 20 years if need be. And some people may need to do that, some will be able to just take care of it.
All right, so.
Mr. Chair, what do we rent it, we've rented land for work on it. What are we even renting, the land typically at per acre?
Depends on if you get it pre-seeding or post-seeding. So if you do pre-seeding, obviously it's a lot cheaper because they didn't have their input costs to seed the land. So I usually try to get that, figured out before they start planting in the spring. Mark off where we're renting to do work. If we're digging up a tile in their field and we're not gonna get to it into the middle of summer or something like that when the crops are up, then you could rent that swath of land, and then you wouldn't have to pay, you just pay the land damages, not crop damage.
Just because I'm wondering if we should be considering renting this land until we can get a solution on it, just because if it might take time, and I'm trying to figure out what that costs.
Well, again, let's
Do you wanna
let
set
the
a ditch
engineer look
committee?
at it, come up with some options. We're not gonna be planning anytime soon, for at least 2 weeks. And, so let's let the engineer look at it, come up with some ideas, suggestions. Short-term, Band-Aid, long-term, some ideas and costs and that sort of stuff, and then we can make a more intelligent decision. Because right now, we're just guessing if, what, maybe.
Yep.
So let's look at the realistic ideas of what we can accomplish here.
Mr. Chair, do you want him to bring back recommendations to the full board right away, or do you want it to maybe have it pre-vetted out in a ditch committee maybe
I would
beforehand?
say probably a ditch committee. There's no reason for the whole board. Obviously, for some reason, these ditches seem to drag on a long time
For
during board
centuries.
meetings. I would say bring it, as far as the ditch committee, I would say just two commissioners that are involved in this ditch would be the best suited for this. There's no reason for, I mean, if you need somebody that has all their ditches taken care of, I'm more than happy to volunteer, because I have no dog in the fight, horse in the race, or whatever you want to call it.
And Mr. Chair, Matt, can, Mr. Handler, do you think he'd be able to take a look at this within the next week or so, or we don't know, but,
It might take just a couple weeks, you know, I'd give them a little
I mean,
bit.
it'd be nice to get this rolling, because
All right, so we hold off planning for at least 3 weeks. Planting for
planting,
3 weeks.
yes.
And then
Think
if I
you're safe
receive
on that.
calls from the landowner, then I can answer them that it's in the works, so that's good.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
That's why I brought it to you, I mean, it's a tough one.
I mean, we've been discussing this for, what, 25 minutes now? And we haven't accomplished really anything. I mean,
We have.
well, we have, but I mean, that's how complicated ditches are.
So Mr. Chair said, okay, if Commissioner Houston and I circle back with Matt as a ditch committee, since it's in both of our districts.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't know, we don't need a we can just recommend that. We don't need a motion, a formal motion, do we? Mr. Kelly?
You don't have to, but it's always good just to formalize it, that it's in the record that you've taken that action.
All right, then can I get a motion so we can move this on?
So moved.
Yeah, I will make a motion that we, get the recommendations from Mr. Handler, Commissioner Vetch and I will meet, but next week at our scheduled meetings as needed, if we get the information by then, we could set up that time, we can formalize the meeting.
At the workshop.
Yep, when the time, otherwise we can do it the next board meeting.
So you're making the motion, you seconded it,
Yep.
or you made the
I'll
motion, she seconded it?
I'll second her motion.
All right, we have a motion second. Any further discussions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, now we get to talk about another ditch.
I get to hand this one off, so, Mark, whenever, if you're on, you can start, sharing your screen and do your presentation.
We got 3 minutes, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to get it through in 3 minutes, but good morning, Mr. Chairman, as well as the rest of the board. My name is Mark Orger. I'm a civil engineer with ISG. I'm going to pull up my screen here, make sure we can get everything to show. All right, how's that?
Yep.
All right. So I just want to circle back a little bit, and I have Chris Adams. He's a construction project manager on the line here with us too. He handles some of our bidding and CA stuff throughout the project. But I do want to circle back a little bit here, looking back at what took place in October of 2020. So that's when we had the ditch repair hearing. So at that hearing, the board approved repairs to County Ditch 10 lines in Victor and Stockholm Townships and an outlet into Lake Ann. The repairs that were approved were buffer seeding, tree clearing, ditch cleaning, culvert lowering, alternative side inlets, slough repairs. Pretty standard repairs. This is just a map showing what the repairs were. And then more specifically looking at culvert repairs, and that included township crossings. It also included highway crossings and field crossings. And so at that hearing back in October of 2020, we went through some preliminary costs, and I got those pulled up here. The first cost that we had was looking at one contractor, so doing the entire project as one project, everything goes into one contract.
Hey, Mark,
Under that, we had an estimated cost of,
can you zoom in a
we had an
little bit?
estimated cost,
Sorry.
yeah.
It's hard to
Yep.
see the table.
Yeah. Better?
Yep.
Great.
So this was just the estimate that we had back in the hearing, and doing the project is with one contractor, no local contractors. The cost estimate was $1.8 million. We attributed $355,000 to the Wright County Road Authority, so that's the highway department, and we had an estimate of $254,000 to the township of Victor for their crossing. So overall, the estimate for the entire project was $2.4 million. We then, working with Matt on this, we looked at some local recent bids from contractors that he had to do some buffer seeding and tree clearing. and we applied those to the project, and it took a significant amount of cost down. So kind of separating the project with a couple different contractors, that brought the price down to an estimate of $1.24 million. We kept the same cost for the highway and the township, and so the estimated cost separated out was $1.85 million. Okay, so that was what was approved. Next, we'll go, let's see here. We're going to go up to what we did on January 22nd, so that's when we actually bid the project. Part of the bidding, we have a few different requirements. We require a bid bond, we require a contractor responsible form, and a available equipment list, and then some references to make sure that we have qualified contractors. One thing that we did get directed to do at that hearing in October was to have bid alternates for different culvert types. We had corrugated metal, reinforced concrete, and polypropylene plastic pipe, just to see what the prices would come in at. So we bid the project, and we had a total of 8 bidders, and I'll first look at our base bid. The base bid came in at an estimate of $915,000. That included the ditch cleaning, that separated out the buffer seating, it also separated out the tree clearing, but it had the culverts that needed to be replaced as corrugated metal. Corrugated metal, you're looking at about a 30-year lifespan. Pretty cheap fix, gets the job done, but again, you're only looking at about 30 years. So the estimate was $915,000. The low bid under this one, which we're calling the base bid, was Molnau Trucking, and their bid was $919,000. The second low bid was $986,000, and that was Blackstone Contractors. Okay, so then we looked at bid alternate 1. This is looking specifically at reinforced concrete pipe culverts. So when we adjusted everything based on that bid alternate, swapping out the culverts for concrete, the estimate was $962,000. The low bid was Blackstone Contractors with a bid of $1,050,000. The second lowest was $1.13 million from Asheville. I think that's the company that's doing the trees. And then just for reference, Molnau Trucking, who was the low bid on the base bid, was $1.2 million. And then the bid alternate 2, that's looking at polypropylene plastic, so that's going to get you 50 to 75 years. Concrete gets you 100 years. So for bid alternate 2, the estimate was $890,000. The low bid was Blackstone Contractors at $991,000, so about $100,000 over the bid. And then the second low was Molnau Trucking at $1 million. So that kind of set the table where our base bid and bid alternates came in. We do have other factors to consider here with this project. We talked with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and they do have funding available for the alternative side inlets. And that does play a really significant role here because essentially what they're saying is they've got funding to cover up to at a baseline, 75% of the alternative side inlet cost. And when you look at the 2 low bidders, Molnau Trucking came in at $37,000 for the alternative side inlets, and Blackstone Contractors came in at $117,000. So when you take your 75% of that for the cost share, it's a significant amount that Blackstone's price would essentially come back down to because of the outside fund. Does that make sense? So since the bid was higher on the alternative side inlets, there's more cost share available for it. And then the last thing that I'll look at, and I'm going to flip over to a little bit more of an updated one. So the next thing that we'll look at is the actual township costs. I know there were some concerns about that and the price to repair these culverts and lower them. So the next 3 tables here are going to show the base bid, the bid alternate 1, and bid alternate 2 for Victor Township, and how the bids came in specifically to what would be charged over to the township. So under the base bid, we estimated with the corrugated metal replacements and then lowering the big box culverts, the engineer's estimate was $217,000. Molnau Trucking came in at $231,000, and Blackstone came in at $159,000. So that's significantly less. We estimated $247,000. Molnau Trucking came in significantly over at $387,000, and Blackstone came in at $196,000. And then panning up a little bit here for the polypropylene, our estimate was $207,000. Molnau Trucking came in again above for $275,000, and Blackstone was again underneath the estimate at $167,000. So really, I'm trying to get this as simple as we can for you here. The price that Blackstone bid on for concrete pipe is a very good price. If you can get prices like this to have culvert crossings last you 100 years, it's a very good price. And I understand that overall it is more expensive than the base bid, but in this case you get what you pay for, and it is a great price for concrete. So I do want to come back and try to just summarize this a little bit better for you. Overall, I guess I would have two different recommendations for you, and that would be up for board discussion. The first one would be looking at Blackstone Contractors. They came in with a bid alternate one price for the concrete pipes at $1,050,000. If you apply that 75% cost share to the alternative side inlets, that brings their price down to $963,000. When you look at Molnau Trucking, the only way to accept them would be if you did the base bid for corrugated metal. Their bid was $919,000. If you apply the 75% to the $37,000 that they had on the alternate side inlets, their bid comes down to $892,000. And so really you're looking at the difference of about $70,000 over an estimate of $250,000 to get concrete pipes in for the culverts to last you 100 years. And so I know I hopefully didn't lose you through that all, but really those honestly would come down to those two different alternatives in my opinion. When you look at factored in costs from the grant to the alternative site inlets, obviously Blackstone Contractors is going to have a lot more to take out of because their bid was higher. When you look specifically at the township costs, if you take the Blackstone bid with the reinforced concrete, you're looking at $195,000 assessed to the township. If you do Molnau with the low bid and the corrugated metal, you're looking at $231,000 assessed to the township. So really Blackstone's numbers for concrete kind of won them for the bid alternates. Obviously concrete's the best product for pipes out there, and it's really a low bid considering what we had estimated and what we've seen for prices coming in on concrete. So I know I went through quite a bit there. Where do we want to start with questions?
Board members? I can't believe you have any questions regarding a ditch, but if you do, please feel free.
This has been a long process, Mr.
Mr. Chair, that was interesting to see how the bidding came in. That was quite an interesting mix and how they all, I mean, the numbers are all over the board for the different services within there, but I agree, Blackstone by far makes the most sense. I mean, like you're paying a little bit more right now, but in the long term, you're recouping a lot. And then also the other side of it, being able to get that reimbursement back from the site assessment piece of it. So,
well, with the concrete being put in, with lasting for 100 years, you'll just be seeing the end of it, you know, Eric, when it finally goes away. I mean, you'd be, what, about 140? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yep. So, no, I guess, I mean, that would be my recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ketchmark.
thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and Matt, that we've had conversations, and I've had it with township officials and Victor. Of course, I got in this late in the game when the project was well underway, but doing my best to keep up. So with that map, Victor is contesting some of this. I got it kind of narrowed down to one thing. Just to summarize, they have 7 culverts that either need to be lowered and or replaced. At the best cost, it looks like $160,000. The biggest one that they're contesting is the biggest culvert, 2 6 to 8 foot diameter ones by Lake Ann, Ingram Avenue, that were put in 10 to 12 years ago. And by the estimate of the engineer on this project, one has to be lowered like 3 feet and one 6 or 12 inches different than that, and they sit side by side. The township's position on this one, mainly because the estimate to move this is $35,000, is that they did their due diligence with the people that did the work 10 to 12 years ago, and they're kind of disputing the resident expert now, saying that they did them wrong and they need to be moved. So they asked that that be brought up here and addressed and put in the minutes. The best I could tell them is it sounds like kind of an evidence deal and documents. You come up with some documents on who the expert and agency was 10 or 12 years ago in particular for this high expense culvert, and it can be looked at. But that's the way I left it with them. But I said, we're not gonna take the word of somebody now saying that we did what we were supposed to do, because we're way deeper than that with our engineer, the cost and devices that may have been available 10 to 12 years ago. So that's their concern, and I voiced that, told them what they can do, and otherwise, you know, that was the biggest thing. So then the next thing is, did we include them on the material? And you're talking about replacing metal for metal, I think.
Yeah, that was the one that was listed in the bid recommendation table that we discussed. So that was just one table. Mark did show the ones for the bid alternatives with concrete and polypropylene, as well, what those costs were.
And overall, we've talked in the future, I think there's a learning experience here about communication involving the township here right along, because at some point, there was arms crossed and people walked away and people said, we're gonna do it and you're gonna pay, or we're gonna sue you. Now, some of those folks are not here anymore, but there is a mechanism to pay for those that don't want to, I guess. I figured that out. But just for the future, this is a good one to learn from, and I'm gonna do my best in the future. We'll talk about it further, maybe about getting the word out on how this should go. But otherwise, a good presentation on Blackstone, it appears, makes a lot of sense. And it's unfortunate the township wasn't more involved on the choice here, but we gotta keep them in mind. It's their cost, and as we go forward.
Well, the townships could have anybody they want to do it. They don't have to go with this bid.
Well, Mr. Chair, we talked a little bit about that, and just, there's a continuity and consistency part, like if you're building a house, if you got.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, they don't have to,
Well,
but I would guess that they're not gonna find anybody that's gonna give them a better price.
Be cheaper.
and are they gonna work in the proper timeline that we think should happen? So there's a risk there, and I think we're so far along, this thing started, my understanding is early 2018. We're 3+ years into it, and I had conversations as recent as 10 minutes before the meeting from the folks. And, hey, sorry, but this should have really been dealt with earlier. Now we're past that.
We've been providing information to the townships as it's been going along. Have you been providing this information all?
Yeah, so this actually started before I was here in
Yeah.
late 2017, so.
Oh, sure, pass the buck.
I think it started like,
pointing that
as soon as we
out.
got on the board, like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But,
I think so too. It's been going on a long time.
But it's a big project. It's $1 million that it really needs, we gotta give it the time it deserves. And the biggest thing is, we have many more townships to go. So this isn't the first and the last time we're gonna have a project like this.
No, the advantage of this one is that not only are we doing and cleaning up the ditches and making the water flow, but we're gonna improve the water quality going in the lake ad. So it's killing two birds with one stone. Finally fixing something that's been an issue for many years, but also improving the water quality, which is above and beyond what the requirement of the ditch is. So, anybody else have any questions? Any answers, any suggestions? So you guys are recommending us to approve the bid with Blackstone, was it?
I think that's,
Unless you're gonna take.
Yeah,
the
those are
base
your,
bid.
those
Unless
are
you're
your two
gonna take the base
options.
bid.
Blackstone with concrete or Mona with corrugated metal.
And Mr. Chair, I'm gonna make a motion to accept Blackstone with the concrete, at the $1,050,000, or in some odd change, the small numbers that are in there, for the bids for the, work on County Ditch 10.
And that also includes the road authority and the alternative side inlets and everything?
I believe that was the number that had all the, pieces to it.
Yep, yep.
And roughly the
Everything's in
township's
there.
responsibility is $160,000 on that?
195.
if you're going with, because remember there was steel and then this would be going with concrete.
Concrete, 195,
Yep.
okay.
And then it's done, and their grandchildren won't even have to worry about
I
it.
mean, it's $40,000 more for the township, but I think the $50,000 more is worth it for the time period from going from 30 to 100 years, and never having to touch it.
And since we're debating a little bit concrete, my experience, what I've seen is with these sections, at times, they separate and the gravel and the fill fall through the cracks. Has technology improved to where these things are connected more with cables or re-rod or anything?
I mean, yeah, I think the concrete technology is improved. And sorry, I'll let Mark start.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. In our spec, we require, essentially we want that concrete pipe and all pipes to be one unit. So we require each section to be tied together. There's a gasket that goes in to make sure that it's watertight so stuff doesn't stuck into it. And then we wrap it around with fabric on each of the seams so that nothing can get into it and it's just one whole conduit. So yeah, absolutely, that's what's in our spec, and, you know, install it correctly should get you 100 years.
And I would even go on top of that is ISG's requirement for bedding the culverts. That's a huge, issue with it. Was it properly bedded? And you get the disjointing and how they bed their culverts will last for a long time.
And they use better glue.
Thank you for explaining that. I would make a second to Commissioner Vetch's motion on that.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Ketchmark. Is there any other discussions? Any other questions? This isn't a resolution, is it? No. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Let the record show the motion was unanimous. So
And then just one
next
note on
week.
the timing, Mr. Commissioner, we'll turn around contracts between us and the contractor and get them to the board to sign and approve. And then we'll look at getting a pre-construction meeting for all landowners to be at probably in a couple months. I think anticipated construction to be at the earliest April on this. So we'll be in communication, myself, Chris Adams with Matt, and we'll have another meeting in a couple months for a pre-con.
And this is scheduled to be done by the end of this year, 2021?
Correct. Completion date is the end of this year.
Assuming all weather conditions. Although the last I heard that
Yeah.
they're talking about a kind of a drier summer this year, so. Time will tell. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
And for those of you that want to review all this exciting ditch stuff, you can do it online later on this evening or anytime after the meeting. So if you are having trouble sleeping tonight, I would suggest watching the ditch meeting and that will help you. I know that's what I do. Okay. We are to items for consideration. Those ditches are long. Commissioner Ketchmark, Personnel Committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So last Wednesday, Commissioner Vetch and I met a Personnel Committee to review a proposal by Health and Human Services to potentially reclassify the Health and Human Services Business Manager position. And we had discussion and heard their points that they made. There was comparison to the Sheriff's Office Business Manager position and how the classification they felt should be changed. It affected potentially 3 to 5 of their personnel that they were asking to be reclassified. And we made points, reference to the $140,000 study that was done and implemented last year that was reviewed by office and department heads a little over a year ago and then implemented. And since then, there have been proposals that are brought to the board that we're asking for reclassifications. And there was discussion with the second floor here, county administration staff, before some of these came to the board. Finally, I think it was in about October, one came through and was approved, and then there were some after that came to the board. So my recommendation, along with Commissioner Vetch, was not to go ahead with recommending the reclassification. It didn't match the business climate in the county with what was going on here. We're giving out COVID relief money to help people sustain life, business, and jobs, and then on the other hand, we're collecting more money from people to justify these pay raises that have gone through. So that was, the end result was recommending not going forward with the recommendation to reclassify those positions.
Mr. Chair, I want to also note that there wasn't sufficient proof of change in scope of jobs, in the job that would warrant a relook at the points of that position.
And Mr. Chair, that's the most important point, it really, I mean, that, or not the most important, but that's, you know, an important point.
Okay. Did you make a motion to accept?
And then there's a second part that I was going to take care of.
Oh, that's
Also
right.
presented was the IT senior developer position. This was a position that was kind of been on our radar. Mr. Fomby in the IT left their positions open in the budgeting session last year because they were in the process of a reorganization and they were trying to figure out what slots they needed to fill to facilitate the projects that we have at hand at this time. He is taking his first crack at one of those positions, and that was that senior developer position. Right now, they've encountered numbers of times where they don't have a lot of relief staff in that roles. We, as a county board, had set aside $300,000 for IT to utilize for positions as we enter into this year, and this is his first request. It was decided by myself and Commissioner Ketchmark that we would support the position, and the recommendation is to approve the recruitment of a senior developer position. And then you can make the motion to approve the minutes and the recommendation.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendations from the Personnel Committee.
I will second that.
Motion by Commissioner Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Vetch. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Commissioner Vetch, regarding Technology Committee.
So the Technology Committee had a very robust agenda, but was accomplished very swiftly in the 60-minute period. A lot of it was a lot of information and updates on where everything is at. In the project updates, the first part of the meeting, we discussed ERP, the CAMA system, Office 365, and a variety of other smaller projects that are in the process at this time. Things are moving along relatively smoothly. The other pieces, dealing with the Office 365 the upgrade to the renewal of it, of the Office 365, which came to the tune of about $380,000. That is a budgeted expense. The committee approved the department to proceed with the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement for a 3-year renewal. So no new money, but money we were expecting that we would be incurring, but the contract was up. New projects that have been coming forward, there's a couple of them. Most of them are larger projects, which are IT-centric in terms of a vendor internal access and helping them vet out how to let them in and who to let them in and how to protect the system when letting them in. And then there's a SQL server replacement. So a lot of those projects are just internal, but yet they will take a lot of hands on deck, information only. The project portfolio summary, we have 24 projects that were closed in this last period, and 7 were canceled. We're still working forward on the project intake scoring. It's coming forward. We'll be able to see more of that here in the months ahead. I guess with that, I will make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendations from the IT committee.
I have a motion.
I can second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewsome. Just one thing to add. These, what we're doing now is compared to what we used to do is actually, we do looking at and score everything to make sure that there's a cost-benefit analysis, that we're not just willy-nilly doing something. A lot of things we don't have a choice with because, such as Microsoft Office 2019 and SharePoint 2019. I did kid a little bit that, we are in 2021. But the idea here is that we want to be on the cutting edge, but not the bleeding edge, meaning that by going to the very, very newest, there's some inefficiencies with current software that needs to be talked with. So that's one of the reasons why we don't go with the brand new stuff. So we're switching from 1892 software up to 2019 now. So we're getting up there and better. But we're not just throwing money at the wall. We are making sure that software that we're purchasing and utilizing has a payback. And that's not just, gosh, that's kind of nice to have. Anybody have any questions, suggestions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All the same sign. Motion carries unanimous. All righty. Administration.
Sure.
How long is this one going to take?
Well, I think this is fairly straightforward item. I'm not anticipating a long discussion on this one, as this is just a bit of a follow-up to actions that were taken last year in December. This is to clarify the duties between the finance director and the auditor treasurer, and just move some of those duties officially from one to the other, and that's kind of the purpose to it. I had worked with the county attorney's office in drafting this up. And we're doing analysis if there are additional things that we'll have to bring forward. We believe there's at least one other resolution we'll have to bring forward in the coming months regarding this. So, Greg, did I miss anything?
Mr. Kelly, no, I think you hit it all on the head. This is mainly just a follow-up formality after the board's decision to make the auditor treasurer an appointed position. This is just formalizing where the duties are and assigning about the duties that were contracted, and then everything else would go over to the new finance director.
That's a very nice pink bow tie you have on.
Pink.
Well, thank you.
That's great.
One of these days I'll get you to dress appropriately, Mr. Chair.
If I could find a light up one to outdo you, I would.
All right, I'll find it.
All right. So can I have a motion regarding the resolution approving delegating duties to the auditor treasurer to finance director?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution delegating the duties of the auditor treasurer in the finance director.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewsome. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none. Resolution. Commissioner Wetter.
Aye.
Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Administrator Kelly, you want to talk a little bit about what we've got planned for our workshop meeting next week?
Yes, sir. We do have quite a number of topics. Tried to gather the long list that we had here. In addition, a few topics that we moved to March's meeting. So hope to cover everything that was brought up. I hope I didn't miss anything. Thought I'd put it on as an item for consideration if there needed to be any discussion, but of course we always start with our scheduling meetings as our standing item. Health and Human Services staff that work on SHIP wanted to do a brief presentation on tobacco-free grounds, which is an initiative as part of the SHIP for consideration. Thought it'd be good to do an update on our business relief program as that committee continues to meet weekly. And is getting towards the end of that program. There was a request to do some discussion and review, just kind of our budgeting software systems, the reports. There were some questions on different items and what they are, what they mean, and what they, where they go in the budget. So I've been working on putting together kind of a high-level jumping-off point presentation for that. Coming out of the Personnel Committee last week, there was discussion about doing a moratorium on reclassification of positions. As part of that discussion, there was a brief discussion about positions that are currently in progress related to the change in finance, recorder, and land records, as well as the attorney's office, which is coming to the Personnel Committee coming up. So I'm anticipating that we'll discuss those positions and kind of that alignment as well as part of D. Wanted to do an update from Flaherty and Hood. He's available at 10 a.m. just to give a status update of some of the things they've been working on and some of the property tax items specifically. You may recall back in December I had been contacted by Grant Wilson, who's the regional director for DNR, wanted to do kind of a meet and greet with us, had reached out to me specifically. I felt it'd be a more effective meeting to have it with all 5 board members and interested staff. After kind of not connecting earlier on, we couldn't find a date that worked. I just suggested perhaps we add this to the workshop since I knew the 5 of you would be here. So move that to approximately 10:30 on that day if it works. So quite a long agenda. Are there other items that the board would like to add for discussion?
It's pretty full.
Yeah, actually, there is one item, just a real quick synopsis, is just the building
Okay.
status.
Okay,
Just so
good idea.
so we know where we're at. Because I had heard that we possibly may not get in when we originally had thought, so just kind of an update.
I know there's a lot of things I could put on this one here, and but
Yeah, no, but that's just kind of an update. You know.
Okay.
No,
Will do.
we don't need to be asking a bunch of questions, just let us know if it'll be 2025 or if it'll still be 2021. Or 2023 when I'm no longer here, and then I don't have to go through all the work of
No,
cleaning my
you're-
office
You're
off.
gonna be here in 2022.
I said 2023.
Okay.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about any of those things? Anybody else want anything else added? All right. Advisory Committee, Advisory Board updates. Commissioner Ketchmark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Met with the Fair Board last night. The big question, of course, is there gonna be a fair or isn't there? Their current guidelines are 250 at a venue, outdoors. So if that continues, they can't put the fair on at that rate. So it's kind of stand by, wait and see, and that's where they're at. So they asked me to pass that along. Little more ditch info. I visited with the sites, ditch 10 and ditch 15. The ditch 15, they have a hardworking contractor that was there all weekend removing trees. Ditch 10, a lot of trees getting removed there. Personnel committee, we already went over. Safe Schools meeting I attended. The school staff report, they're adapting. They feel they have a safe atmosphere for the kids. And there's a slight problem with truancy and unaccountable students at this point, and they're wondering how to address that. The county attorney's office was there, and they're able to take on some of the more chronic cases at this point. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Houston?
All right, so I attended my first HHS Advisory Committee meeting, and we didn't have a quorum, so we couldn't actually conduct any business. However, we did get the some updates, and one of the big things was the unmet needs. So in that, it's essentially, I mean, truancy is way up, and also there's a lot of kids that are basically failing, failing grades. So that's been a real concern with it's all kind of relates often to a lot of the Wright County mental health needs that they've got going. So we talked about integrated services and contact center, which is a very positive thing because you can get somebody to essentially help you right away when you call. And I was also at the safety meeting, and we talked about the 4 cases of people that had injuries on the job, addressed those, and talked about ways to further, or in the future, mitigate those things. And they also have done the inspections, essentially. Mostly people are COVID compliant. So we're, basically they're working on a work plan and emergency closing policy. And there's a COVID SharePoint and a little bit about the Government Center Clinic. So anyway, is there anything else that you have to add, Administrator Kelly, on that?
Maybe I'll do it in my updates.
Okay.
I think you covered most of it though.
Okay.
so.
And then the last thing I'll just touch on is the graduation of one of our drug court return people who has, it's been maintained 889 days of sobriety, so that's another success story with the turn. And there's more on Central EMS, so I'll do that next time.
All right. Thank you. Last week, the IT committee, we talked about CARES Act, which will be, I'll let Commissioner Vetch along with the CMRP deal with all that sort of stuff, and then, which is a very interesting association with counties and townships and cities. And then Friday, Commissioner Batch and I were both on Wright County Economic Development Partnership on their annual meeting, and former Commissioner Potter was
Outstanding citizen.
Yeah, outstanding citizen of Wright County.
See, that's on our website.
Yep.
That's cool.
So I commend him for everything he has done. He's helped a lot with our roadways throughout the county, not just in one area, but in the whole area. So I thank him for everything that he's done in that. Commissioner Vetch?
Piggybacking on that, I thank Jolene Foss and the Wright County EDP board. They put on a great annual meeting. They had a great presenter on managing your personal brand.
Yeah, that was.
It was interesting. You know, there's some times it made you think a little bit, so it was nice.
Yeah, they talked about everything you name on the internet and what that relates to, and how some people have just been ruined by one person who was giving false information.
Yep, or just the biggest thing that people always is, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Is the big question you should always ask yourself. Anyways, then Thursday last week we had our CMRP meeting. They're always interesting. You never know what direction they're going to go. This was our first kind of comeback after we put a pause for December and January on our Framework 2030 project. Just because of the COVID and the holidays, we felt like it wasn't getting the involvement that it needed to. We're going to pick up that torch here again and try to complete the second round of engagements so we can put the Framework 2030 study to bed, hopefully somewhere in mid-April. We have a couple workshops that we're working on, one that's pertaining to the round 2 of engagements, and the other workshop is actually talking about post-Framework 2030 and what this group wants to, how it wants to proceed forward.
Oh, the accomplish. You got new members on the board now from elections and stuff like that. So it's trying to get everybody on the same page. You know, we're dealing with multiple cities, multiple townships, a couple of different counties. You know, what one city wants doesn't benefit another city, and they're doing it for their own reasons. We need to get everybody on board to go, what works best for this region?
And I think everybody, the hardest thing is everybody wants short-term gains, and unfortunately, to get the things that everybody in this room wants, they're all long-term, big projects that you are not going to see anything really happen in the next 5-10 years. But the work that you're doing now is going to make it possible that you're going to see these projects in the 10 to 15 to 20-year window.
Not my lifetime.
So, with that, then our business relief group met on Wednesday last week. Just one real quick thing with it. You know, we've had a good number of applications come through. Unfortunately, we've had to deny a certain number of them because a lot of them are profitable.
Which is good, which is great.
Which is great, but I mean, I can't give money to profitable businesses, so that is put us in the route where we also looking at it. There's a good number of businesses and industries, especially ones that are directly affected by
Shutdown.
the Executive Order 2099 that had not applied. And I know I had made some phone calls myself and realizing that they had no idea that this was even out there. So we actually decided to hire the 3 staffed chambers in the county to do some direct calling to businesses across the county. Because we looked at it internally, we just did not have the capacity to do so. They were happy to partner with us, and they've been dialing away, now going on 3-4+ days, so.
That was Commissioner Vetch's idea, which was an excellent,
It is.
because he's right, there's a lot of restaurants that didn't realize, bowling alleys. I mean, all these people lost lots of money.
It is.
So it was good for him to come up with that idea.
Yeah, especially you think you're getting all the information out there, but if people aren't looking for it, they don't know it's there.
Yep. Anything else?
That's all I've got.
Commissioner Wetter?
I had no committee meetings last week, but I did take the Board of Appeal and Equalization training, so we're good through 2024 for the meetings conducted.
Very good.
So that means we got 3?
3, yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
All right. I guess that's it then, right?
Mr. Chair, I have one.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm just trying to fool around with the Administrator
sorry.
Kelly.
Okay.
He does get
Sir,
a couple
sorry
of
about that.
seconds to talk.
He's trying to ice the kicker. All right, okay. It's been a busy week. Did have the opportunity to stop out briefly at the Government Center and look at the space and see how it's coming along as of last week, and look at 3rd floor, make sure everything's good at that. Continued some discussions regarding the wellness, or the Health Partners Clinic. We had kind of a meeting just discussing some of the timeline and logistics of how to keep that moving forward. Some more to come on that. Similarly, met yesterday briefly regarding the EDA with Bruce Kimmel, and just working on some of the bylaws. Want to get that to you guys yet this week for your review. Commissioner Hewsome mentioned the safety meeting. A lot of discussion on COVID, and it's been great. Just kind of aside to see the collaboration between the departments and figuring out how to do mass vaccinations out at our highway building. That's been really cool to see how a problem was presented and staff worked together to figure it out. So that was really cool. I think we've talked about the Economic Development Partnership, caught the last part of that presentation, which I thought was good. Phil Kern will be the chair for 21, if that wasn't already mentioned. City Administrator from Delano. Regarding ERP, we're hoping, well, we will be doing testing of the budgeting module 3 days next week, so that's moving forward. We had some demos on accounts receivable, general ledger, and fixed assets this week. A lot of discussions taking place kind of on the land records finance transition, trying to get that finalized. We're looking to make all the moves of personnel on March 8th, which is the start of a payroll period. I've also started looking at, since we're not doing passport photos right now, finding some efficiencies in that and then reopening that process. So more to come on that.
The passport photos is because the feds still have a shutdown regarding that sort of stuff. They're not processing passports, correct?
I believe they have resumed.
They have
We've just
finally?
had some issues with people getting photos done in other locations of not a quality that's met their regulations. So we've kind of said, I don't know, this will work, and sent in, and it'll get denied and sent back. So we're just kind of looking at the best way to provide that service since we've suspended it temporarily with COVID here, but also how that will work in the new facility as well. So more to come on that. I don't know if I mentioned to the board earlier, but I did enroll in the NACO, the National Association of Counties High Performance Leadership Academy. I'm about 3 weeks into that now, and it's been great.
Good.
I've been doing that on my time kind of outside of work, so really nice resources to hear from some of our greatest minds in leadership, so it's been kind of cool. So more to come on that, but a lot going on.
Alrighty. Commissioner, you're done, Administrator?
I am more than done, yes. Well done.
You had something else, Commissioner Ketchmark?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And chronologically on my agenda, warrants comes at the very end, number 9. And maybe a point, I suspect that goes in another part of the agenda, but because of space, they put it down at the end. And do you think in the future we could put warrants where it belongs and see below or something for the PDFs? Just because it's down at the end, and I have one item that got my attention off this, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So this was brought up to me last year, pointed out, and I said I'll address it. So if you want to follow along, page 10 on this disbursement report, which is number 4 under documents, but we've got an expense there of $16,000 for plowing county facilities, and I'd just like to ask the board a question with the shed fulls of snow removal equipment and personnel, if this has been looked at to have our folks, maybe the Parks Department at slow times during the winter, perform some of the snow plowing duties when, for example, the training center, they drive right past to do parks with 1 tons and different size equipment, whatever's needed. Plus, of course, the campus is right next to a couple of shed fulls of snow removal equipment. Has that ever been addressed? The cost
We do.
balance with that?
I'm gonna let Coordinator or Administrator Kelly take that one. Yeah, trust me, it's actually cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to ask because it's come up and
Yeah,
it was good timing because we got the figure here,
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Go ahead, Administrator Kelly.
Yeah, I kind of follow up on that regarding the government center here. We did an analysis probably, I'd say about 4 years ago, when Alan had come on board. We kind of look at the services that our current staff were doing versus those that it would make more sense for us to look at contracting out, and that's kind of where we landed on this building. Kind of the discussion relative to outlying sites. Some of the things Highway does plow their own right now, but oftentimes it's not practical or feasible due to the size of the equipment and where they have to get through. As well as trying to schedule that during a snowfall event. Their priority's gone to the roads and trying to clear those off. So oftentimes they wouldn't get to it necessarily in the time frame that we would need it here for access at our facilities. So I don't know if you have other specific questions, we can follow on that, but.
Well, specifically Parks Departments, because I would suspect their workload goes down, but they have access to the same equipment. Highway, yeah, they got their own, responsibilities. It's a busy time, but
Yep.
cost-wise, is there a big difference? You were talking about manpower and timing, but
Well, the Parks Department used to do this facility. And when we looked at it, it was actually ended up being cheaper because they were having to do it on, on an overtime basis. Because they have to be called in and that sort of stuff. Now, one of the things we do with the Highway Department and Parks is that when we have the snow banks that really build up, they haul it away. So we don't private that out, and they do that when they have time and stuff too. We had people that were being paid quite a bit of money to mow lawns on a riding tractor. So it was decided to look at that, and again, we saved the county taxpayers a lot of money by hiring a landscaping company to mow lawn so that person could focus on taking care of the buildings.
and now with the campus, of course,
It'll have to all be looked at
Yeah,
again.
That's, I thought the timing is good. So for whatever it's worth, now we're stretched out to County Road 35, 6-7 miles, and we're moving, out to the campus to the north. But, okay, we can
Yeah, it definitely should be addressed and looked at.
get it to the right committee or wherever that comes up.
Yeah.
But timing I thought was good, came up, stood out, and we're in the middle of winter, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, but until we get everything out over there, it's kind of hard to do, but
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
you're welcome. Anything else? Anybody have any issues? We are adjourned at 11:09, and before I bang the gavel, this is not my fault this meeting went this long.